The NFL draft is going to be kicking off in less than 48 hours. Who are the 49ers going to take? There's some questions still about the quarterback situation, the wide receivers. Who's going to be the starting quarterback in 2023? We're going to get into all of that next on Inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Inside the 49ers. It is almost draft time. We only have about 2 days left. The 49ers don't have a pick right now until Friday, but that doesn't mean the draft isn't 2 days away. So a lot of exciting stuff to get to. John Lynch spoke yesterday at 49ers headquarters, talked a lot about the quarterback position, whether it was Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. A lot of it was around Lance. Talked a little bit about Brandon Ayuk. We're going to touch base on all that tonight. We're also going to give you guys the ultimate 49ers draft preview show right here on Inside the 49ers. And to do that, I brought on my good pal, Eric Kuiper Jr. We'll get to that in a little bit. But everybody knows him as BayAreaBaller. How you doing, Eric?
Jack, I'm doing great. It's a fun time of the year. The NFL draft is a couple days away. You got the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball. It's just a fun time to be a sports fan. And I'm ready to talk some Niners and some draft prospects.
Absolutely, especially the NBA with the playoffs, big game coming up tomorrow. So that's why we had to do the show tonight, because we didn't want to go up against the Warriors in that big game against Sac. And I'll ask you some questions about that at the end of the show. But let's get into it really quick before we get into the draft. Though I do want to ask you about Trey Lance and the possibility of a trade there. I know John Lynch yesterday saying that that he expects for Trey Lance to be on the team, but I found it very interesting too that he did say that, it's not like the phones are ringing all that much, and any talks that they've had haven't been very substantive to this point. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on Trey Lance. I think we both expect him to be a member of the 49ers this year as well, but kind of what was your take on what John Lynch had to say around Trey Lance yesterday?
It was nothing unexpected, Jack. I had been saying I felt a trade this offseason for Lance was unlikely, and it's because his stock is so low. The kid's barely played. He's coming off an injury. So at this point, you do not want to trade him for pennies on the dollar when you invested so much to go and get him, and you really don't know what kind of quarterback he is. So I wasn't buying kind of this trade speculation. I think they did kind of put out that feeler via Rappaport and said, hey, we're fielding calls because they want to gauge the market. If someone did blow their socks off and sent them a late 1 or an early 2, they might consider it. But like John Lynch said, it's been a tentative market. So at this rate, it's just par for the course. They gauged it. They put out some feelers. And at this point, they're going to hold on to Trey Lance.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. There's, you start to look around, and here's the one thing that I took away from yesterday, and it wasn't John Lynch's comments that gave me this takeaway. It was actually the trade that the Green Bay Packers and the New York Jets made, because you look at that trade, and that was a trade of a guy who has been an NFL MVP, a Super Bowl winner. He's done a lot of things in the NFL, a heck of a lot more than Trey Lance has ever done, and the best that the Packers could get was a second this year and a conditional one the following season. And look at Trey Lance, and he's nowhere near that. The 49ers gave up a bunch to get him, but they're not going to get a second-round pick this year. They're lucky. They'd be lucky if they were able to get a fourth-round pick this year, maybe a conditional second next year at best if they were to make that trade. So I think that's one of the reasons why you still have Trey Lance here in San Francisco. They like I said, according to Lynch, there haven't been very many calls to begin with, and they haven't been there hasn't been much substance to them. And it makes a lot more sense for the 49ers to hold on to Trey Lance than to give him up, even if they don't believe he's the long-term solution with where they are right now with Brock Purdy, with Sam Darnold coming in as well. it makes sense for them to hold on to Trey Lance as long as possible, just like they did last year with Jimmy Garoppolo. They have a number in place that if they can get this pick or this type of a package, they'll go ahead and they'll give them up. Otherwise, they've already built their roster. There's no reason to give up. It's going to cost them some money against the salary cap, whatever. So if a trade's going to come down of Lance, it's going to come down, I think, closer to the end of the training camp, maybe even in the season by the trade deadline, somewhere around there. Who knows? But if there even is a Trey Lance trade, he might not. He might come out and he might all of a sudden be the guy that everybody expected him to be when the 49ers took him back in 2021. So we'll see what happens there. But
I'm sorry to cut you off, Jack, but I think if Trey Lance has a good preseason, and I know you can scoff at it, hey, it's the preseason. A good preseason, honestly, I feel like could boost his stock. Okay, I remember Matt Schaub, who was an unknown commodity, had a good preseason with the Falcons. Next thing you know, they get some trade value for him. So a good preseason could boost the value, but right now, stock's too low. You're not trading him for pennies on the dollar for a 5th or a 6th round pick at this point, because you don't know what we have in Trey Lance.
Yeah, and where I was going to say is at this point right now with everything they have, you go ahead and hold on to him. You're already bought in for the season in terms of his salary cap number. You've already built the roster. It's not like you're going to go out and, if you were to trade him now, you're going to be giving up more money anyway. If you trade him later on, it's going to be a little bit of savings. Unless like you said, if he has a really good preseason, really good training camp, and he's blowing it out, then maybe some other team's going to want to get him. But at that point, who knows, depending on where Brock Purdy is in his recovery anyway. So he may end up staying. It all just might be one of those situations where he's going to be a 49er in 2023. That's what the 49ers have said. Let's go ahead and take him at face value. Although my big takeaway from yesterday was it sounded like if there was a team that came and knocked on their door and blew them away and said, we're going to give you this for Trey Lance, that they would be willing to do it. Everything about it sounded to me like they like Trey. They're going to give him a chance to compete. But in terms of believing he's the guy and the long-term solution in San Francisco, I think they've moved on from that. At least that's kind of the way that it sounded to me.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, Jack. I'm not going to push back against you. What I will say is keeping Trey Lance on this team, it's going to provide some nice insurance. Okay, we saw what happened last year. Jimmy Garoppolo goes down. Trey Lance goes down. Brock Purdy goes down. Josh Johnson goes down. Like, they need some insurance policies. Kyle Shanahan and his quarterbacks, they've had a high volume of injuries these past few years. So keeping Trey, I think it's the pertinent move, because you might get to see what he's actually got on the field, but he's also giving you this level of insurance where, we know how often these 49ers quarterbacks get banged up.
Yeah, and that's it. And that's the main thing is the insurance. And that's kind of, I think, what a lot of people have been thinking, myself included, as to why he would stay and why they were going to hang on to him. And, the news on Brock Purdy yesterday was, again, trending in the positive direction. John Lynch has always been positive, though, when talking about Brock Purdy. In terms of that, my one big takeaway from the Brock Purdy discussion was just the time frame. The time frame all along has been given in terms of months, in terms of 3 months, 6 months. We heard it again for the second time from John Lynch and the 49ers yesterday. Both Lynch and Shanahan said this during the owners meeting. They both John Lynch said it again yesterday. It's not about months, it's about weeks. And so the next inflection point, according to John Lynch, going to be at 12 weeks. That's what they said both times. That's when Purdy is expected to be able to start his throwing program. Now, what that means is 12 weeks post-surgery is June 2nd. That's a week and a half difference between that and when he had his surgery. And then on top of that, you look at it, and in terms of returning, if he's ready to go fully, if it takes him that full 6 months, that puts him back with the 49ers cleared, good to go August 24th, the day after the final preseason game. So just kind of give you some time frames there, and we'll see if Purdy's able to beat that a little bit and be ready a little sooner. All of Nick Bollins, Jake Delhomme, he had full Tommy John surgery. He was back 7 months. It's just a different deal with quarterbacks than pitchers with these UCL injuries. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Definitely. It's a wait and see approach. Although right now, if you told me, hey, I'm expecting Brock Purdy to start out the season on the short-term IR, potentially miss 4 games, I think that's still within reason.
Mhm.
Obviously, if he's back and he's right and he's feeling good, then they've spoken, talking John and Kyle have spoken that Brock Purdy's their guy. So if he is healthy, then you don't do that. He's going to be the week 1 starter. I don't want to rush him back. I think there's a chance he starts out on the short-term IR, get him fully up to speed, potentially see what you got in a Trey Lance. That might be the perfect excuse to kind of see, okay, Trey, you got this 4-game sample size. Brock, we're not rushing him back. He's on the short-term IR. And then you can evaluate Trey Lance getting multiple starts in a row, hopefully. So that's a scenario I could see play out. But these guys, and myself included, I'm high on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I'm high on Brock Purdy too. It's kind of hard not to be after the performance that he put up last year, coming off the bench and beat Miami, the starts that he had there. For me, the playoff performances against Seattle and Dallas really stand out as far as how well he played there. It's a bummer we didn't get to see the NFC Championship game that everybody was expecting to see. I think that as well. When it comes to Lance, I'm not sure if he's the long term, if they're even going to give him a shot. I think that Brock Purdy is going to be ready to go week 1. I think Purdy's going to be back in training camp a little bit earlier than everybody's expecting, based on the time frames and all that kind of stuff. I think he's going to be back early enough to where he's the week 1 starter. That's my take. But I don't think anybody that says it's going to take a little bit of time or he's going to start on short-term IR or all these types of things, I'm not going to argue with you too much. I'm not going to say you're full of malarkey or anything like that, because I can understand that thinking and I can understand the direction. If it does take him all the way until the end of August, that's just 2 weeks before the start of the regular season, and it might take a little bit more of a ramp up. So I think that's where that's coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, just kind of keeping on that in terms of the quarterbacks, because there was another trade talk that I wanted to talk about too. But, yet today, I don't know if you saw this, but there was an interview that actually took place last week. It kind of popped up on 49ers Twitter today. Kind of the 49ers people started to pay attention to it. Actually, it was Vish Kumaran who I think found it and kind of got it out there. And then he was on with Stats, Rob Guerra, and they got it on the show together today. But basically, it was an interesting discussion that was taking place on the show. They were asking Palmer about Trey Lance and different quarterbacks, but it got to Lance, and they asked, what would you trade Trey Lance for? Would you give up a 5th? What would it be in terms of a 5th round spot? What he said was, it just depends on, for him, it would depend on if the guy that you're going to get in the 5th round, do you expect him to be better than Lance, or is Lance's experience, with the in the NFL, is that worth more than what you're going to get in terms of that lack of experience with somebody else? And then he talked about how the situation that Lance has been in and how good it's been and how he has a group of guys around him that really know what they're doing. And it's a really good offensive staff and good players and all those types of things. And then he continued on and said, like the guy that's going to start there, Sam Darnold. So I want to get your take on Jordan Palmer and why you think he's saying that he believes Sam Darnold is going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers.
I don't know what to make of it, Jack. First off, I don't know who Jordan Palmer is talking to other than Sam Darnold himself, because Jordan Palmer is Sam's quarterback coach. So obviously there's a message being relayed there. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think they've anointed either. They don't know who's going to start. It might be Brock Purdy. How does Jordan Palmer know Brock Purdy's not going to be ready? And honestly, Jack, my take on this is, I think the Niners, they wanted Sam Darnold in the building. We talked about the quarterback insurance and the myriad of injuries. They wanted Sam Darnold in the building. How do you get him in the building? You're not going to get him in a 49er uniform by saying, hey, Sam, look, we got Brock, we got Trey, but we think you're a good quarterback 3. That's not going to get him in the building. I think they told Sam, hey, Brock's got this injury. Trey's coming off an ankle. Like, hey, we're going to let you compete with these guys. And, Brock might not be ready. So you might be starting week 1. You and Trey are going to battle it out. I think that's what they told Sam Darnold. But in reality, if you start Sam Darnold over Trey Lance, some heads are going to roll. I know Niners Twitter is going to be on fire at John Lynch and at Jed York, whoever they can at. Okay. So I don't know who Jordan Palmer's talking to. Has he been in Santa Clara? Is he calling up Kyle Shanahan and getting his feedback? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, Jack. I don't think it's been defined as who's starting week 1. So I'm not putting a whole lot of credence into what Jordan Palmer's saying.
Yeah, I like what you have to say about it. And I agree with pretty much everything you said. I think that it comes from the fact that he works with Darnold, so they have a relationship there. And so I think I don't think it has anything to do with him knowing what's going on in Santa Clara. I think he's getting that from Darnold himself. And maybe it's like you said, maybe they told him, hey, Sam, you can come here, you're going to have a chance to start, and we'll go from there. Or they told him, hey, Sam, we're looking to move on from Trey. We know who our starter is going to be, and the starter is going to be Brock Purdy, but he's injured, so we're not sure when he's going to be back. And we're going to try to move Trey as soon as we can. There's going to be a competition, but if you win that, he's going to be moved and you're going to be the starter. There could have been a conversation like that. We don't know. We're guessing at this, but there had to have been some kind of discussion around it. And I like what you're saying. I think that really makes the most sense, was that you're not going to get him in if you say, hey, you're going to come and you're going to be number 3. I don't think that. I think I've said all along when it comes to Sam Darnold that he's coming in to compete, that he thinks he's coming in to compete. It was clear from his opening presser that he feels like he's coming in to compete, because he said it a couple of times. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out. And then in terms of really quick, the take that, 49ers heads are going to roll if Sam Darnold ends up beating out Trey Lance. And here's the one thing I'll say on that. I don't think that the 49ers, meaning John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, maybe even the other guys up in the building, but I don't think that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan give a rip about what anybody says on Twitter. Because if they did, Jimmy Garoppolo would have been gone after 2019 or even after 2020, right? He definitely wouldn't have been back in 2021, definitely would have been back in 2022. And so I don't think that from the coaching staff, I don't think they really care. They know that I think their biggest thing is they need to win. And we'll get into that in a minute.
You're right. They do. And what I will say is, we heard reports Mac Jones was the guy, and I don't know how true it is, but obviously they didn't pick Mac Jones. They traded up and then they changed their intuition and went Trey Lance. Whether there was some pushback, right? We all know the narratives that were out there when it was speculated the Niners were going to take Mac Jones, whether they were right or wrong or true or false. We know those narratives were there, and you had credible reporters such as Adam Schefter saying, look, I'm hearing it's Mac Jones. Then all of a sudden it was Trey Lance. So what changed there? Was there some pushback that got to Jed or got to John and they say, look, maybe is there anyone else other than Mac you like? But
I think at the end of the day, I think it came down to Kyle Shanahan making the decision, and Kyle Shanahan wanted Trey Lance. I think that's the way that it played out. I think that maybe John Lynch wanted Mac Jones. It seems to me like when it comes to the 49ers, a lot of the leaking and the kind of stuff that we're hearing about seems like it's more of a John Lynch type of thing. Who knows? But that's what it kind of sounds like. I think that John Lynch and some of those folks wanted to go the Mac Jones route. It was Kyle Shanahan who wanted Trey Lance. And I think that's one of the reasons why when you listen to them talk, there's a little bit of a difference in the way they talk about him. And Kyle Shanahan's always been a little bit more pro Trey Lance than John Lynch. So we'll see. But this is an interesting one. And the other one is Brandon Ayuk. And they brought this up yesterday. And I know that this is another player that's had a lot of smoke around him this offseason in terms of a potential trade. The one thing that I'll say around Brandon Ayuk is I don't think he's going to get traded. The longer that it holds out, though, because you just saw one of the guys you saw a player get the 5th-year option today. Lynch said we'll find that out after the draft. That's when they'll make that decision. I think that's them kind of holding out, maybe just in case they get a really crazy offer for Ayuk or something like that. But the one thing that he said about Brandon Ayuk that stood out to me was about how important this season is to the 49ers, about how important it is to have the best possible team together this year. They have a group that's a little bit on the older side now. Trent Williams is getting towards the end of the rope. George Kittle's getting towards the end of the line. Kyle Juszczyk's getting towards the end of the line. So on that offensive side, on the defensive side, you're still a little bit younger. Fred Warner's younger and those types of things. But I think this is an all-in year for the 49ers, and Brandon Ayuk will be with the team in 2023. But when you get to 2024, I think saying that you could see the same thing happen with Brandon Ayuk that you saw with DeForest Buckner, I think that's fair, and I think it's possible, very highly possible to happen.
We're in lockstep here. I agree, Jack. There's no chance, in my opinion, there's no chance Ayuk is getting moved this offseason or at the draft. No chance. Because you're right. This is a win-now team with Super Bowl aspirations. You don't get rid of a talented player like Brandon Ayuk when you're trying to win a Super Bowl and try to replace him with a rookie. They tried that with Buckner, and it didn't work. Now, going back to why John Lynch, spoke so vaguely in terms of picking up the fifth-year options on Ayuk. And my reasoning for that is they're not going to pick up Kinlaw's fifth-year option, and they weren't going to break that news at this press conference, in my opinion. So that's why he was very non-committal and said, we'll handle that after the draft, because he wasn't going to break the news that, look, we are not picking up Javon Kinlaw's option, but you can 100% guarantee they are picking up Brandon Ayuk's fifth-year option. And like I said, he's not getting traded this offseason. But next, Jack, it's possible, especially if Ayuk does have – every year it feels like Ayuk just keeps getting better and better and better. And if he builds off his 1,000-yard season this past year and he goes for 1,200, and he has 9 or 10 TDs with Purdy, layering him the ball, he might price himself out of the 49ers. He might price himself out. This team has paid a lot of different stars at all these different positions. When you're talking Kittle, Warner, Bosa's due, Trent Williams, there's so many massive contracts. Debo, his fellow wide receiver. So if you told me Ayuk was on the move next offseason, I could believe it. But it ain't happening right now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't necessarily think so either. It's interesting, too. Here's the one thing I will say this about Brandon Ayuk. I think when you talk about his numbers and how good his numbers were last year, his numbers, it took not having Debo Samuel there for his numbers to really get up. It was the game against Las Vegas. He had 101 yards against Vegas. He has 91 yards against Washington. Or actually 81 yards, but those are two of his bigger games, and that's without Debo Samuel. And I think in order for him to get up to 1,200, 1,400, that type of thing, I think you need to not have Debo Samuel around, because Debo Samuel is going to take up a good deal of catches. So we'll see how that works out. We'll see how it plays out. I think Ayuk's a really good player. He's definitely grown, but there's something there about him that I think there's a possibility that he has the value to warrant maybe bringing something of value back next year. The 49ers, if they go through this transition we're talking about, next year is going to be a big draft. They already have they have a good number of picks in the first 3 rounds, because they get their first round back next year. They have a second already, and they'll get a couple of comp picks in the third. So we'll see how it all plays out. But here's what I brought you on here for, Eric Kuiper Jr. I brought you on to talk draft. I want to talk about the 49ers draft. I want to get your thoughts on where the 49ers are going to go. They're going to be trading up, they're going to be trading back, they're going to be sitting still, because that's one of the things last year when you look back at the draft, the 49ers didn't move around. They're known, John Lynch is known to trade quite a bit. And last year they just sat still and they took all their picks as they came. There was no trade ups, there was no trade backs, they were just sat right there. This year, their first pick's coming up at 99, and wanted to get your thoughts. Are the 49ers going to move around a bunch, or are they going to sit still? What are your thoughts?
I think they're making all 3 of those third-round picks. Okay. Now, in totality, the Niners have 11 picks. They're not going to draft 11 players. I would try to trade some of those later, the 6s and 7s, and you're just going to move up a little bit because those don't have a ton of trade value. But the third-round picks, Jack, in my opinion, I prefer the 3 swings at it in the third rather than packaging those up. Maybe those 3 threes can get you like to the back end of the second, but if you package those end of the third round picks, you're probably getting to like the early third round, in my opinion. I think that's where the point value would have it at. And rather than have one pick early in the third round, give me the 3 picks at the end of the third because I want 3 cracks at it. Now, the thing is, you mentioned the Niners got all these picks next year. That's the thing, Jack. So they could package maybe 2 of these threes, add in another third round pick from next year. That way you're still holding on to some of these picks, or you're keeping anyway. So I could see a trade up, Jack, but in my opinion, they would be better off taking 3 players, 3 guys you like at the end of the third round. Because this draft class, Jack, it's got good depth, and you heard John Lynch speak of it. This draft has good depth, but at the top, like if you're looking outside the top 10, like there's a big drop off in talent. Like this draft is not top heavy. So give me the 3 swings at the end of the third.
Yeah, the only thing that could change there is I do think I'd like them taking 3. The thing is, you start to look at the names of the players that they've been bringing in, and for the most part, you're looking at guys like Yaya Diaby, Jalen Reed, Roshan Johnson, the running back, Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle, those guys. And those are all guys that are going to go a little bit above that 99, at least based off of the different things that I've been looking at. They're going to go in that 90 range, maybe in the mid 80s. But they're not going to get all the way down to 99. So if they want one of those guys, I think you need to trade up to get them. Like you're saying, they have those comp picks that they're going to get next year, so they could use a third next year along with a third this year to move up and still get 3 picks in the third round, that type of thing. So there's a lot of flexibility with what they can do there. We'll see the direction that they go. Now, if they stay, and you're saying is your expectation that they're probably going to stay at 99?
Yes, I think they're
Okay.
picking all 3 of those third round picks.
Yeah, that's what you had mentioned. So let's go through them. Tell me, 99, 101, and 102, who are the 49ers taking?
Well, you mentioned a tackle I like because I'm looking kind of at positions of need. But philosophically, you always go best player available. But I can't help and kind of look at a couple of these spots on the roster thinking, okay, right tackle could use a boost. Defensive end, I feel like they could add a speed rusher or really a pass rusher to come in, on passing downs. So some names I'm looking at, you mentioned Blake Freeland. You're right. I wouldn't expect him to slip to pick 99, but if he's there, I'm running to the podium. I'm taking Blake Freeland. The guy, he was a wall at BYU, similar build to McGlinchey, 6'8", and he's really athletic. He absolutely tore up the combine in terms of his vertical and some of these combine drills. I like Blake Freeland. Now, if you wanted to go with more of an upside athlete type of pick at the tackle position, then you're looking at Wanya Morris of Oklahoma. This guy, he was a former 5-star recruit, highly coveted coming out of high school. He's got the length and the size of what you're looking for at the tackle position. So Wanya Morris, that's a guy who I'm looking at pick 99 with one of those third round picks to bolster the tackle position. Nick Saldiveri's another tackle that's on my radar, Old Dominion. So offensive tackle, I know Colton McKivitz is in place. He's probably kind of penciled in as the starter right now, but I want to add somebody to compete with him, right? The goal of this offseason, Jack, the goal of every offseason is to get better. So I'm looking around, analyzing where can the Niners get better. And Colton McKivitz, I think he's all right, okay? But I want better than all right. So I'm looking to upgrade, potentially Wanya Morris. He's a high upside tackle out of Oklahoma. And defensive end, I want to add a pass rusher, Jack, because, Cleveland Farrell's coming in. Like, okay, Cleveland Farrell, like I feel he's more of a base down guy. Drake Jackson couldn't get on the field last year. I like Drake Jackson. I'm hoping Drake Jackson's the guy. Every training camp, Jack, you're there. There's a guy who media is talking about who really changed his body, who came in and like, hey, this guy came in yoked up. Like, I want that to be Drake Jackson. I'm hoping he's working hard in the weight room because I think he's got a lot of potential, but I think he's got to change his body a little bit. So I still have hope for Drake Jackson, but I want to add to that room. Austin Bryant was a free agent pickup who I hadn't known coming over from Detroit, But when I watched the little tape I could find on Austin Bryant, he's a pass rusher, so he is intriguing. I kind of liked him. Played with the Lions, former Clemson guy. So I liked that pickup. But getting back to the draft, I want to add – go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of at 99, you brought up the guy that I think, I'm with you on that. I think at 99, that's the good spot. There's a number of tackles that you can pick there. Saldiveri is one. You talk about Blake Freeland, who everybody seems to like because of his athleticism, and I like him too. The only thing with him that concerns me is that he's played left tackle. He hasn't played right tackle. He's only been on the left side, and that's a tough transition. We saw kind of how the 49ers struggled with that with Aaron Banks in 2022 or 2021. There were some other things in play there too because of the injury and stuff like that. But I think Wanya Morris is the guy. If they're going to take a tackle at 99, I think he makes a ton of sense. An athletic guy, again, he's improved throughout his career. He's much better now this last season than he was when he started. I don't think he even started Oklahoma. I think he played somewhere else originally. He might have been West Virginia. And then he went to Oklahoma on a transfer and really improved it during his time there. So I think that a guy like Wanya Morris, I want to see if they're going to take a right tackle. I want to see them take a guy that's played right tackle and have him be there the whole time. One other thing to just kind of think about, though, here is that they do have a guy who's played tackle already on their roster. He played right guard for him last year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Spencer Burford, because if Spencer Burford, I want to see about trying to maybe kick him out to play tackle. That opens up guys later on down in the draft. There's some offensive guards that they've talked to, Antonio Mafi from UCLA being one of them. So, but I'm with you. My number one pick at 99 for the 49ers, I'm going with Wanya Morris.
Hey, we're on the same page there. Wanya Morris is a high upside tackle with all the tools. You get him in the building, and Chris Forrester, I like Forrester, the offensive line coach. You see if he can coach him up and get the best out of him.
Yeah. And then really quick, Jan says, didn't we sign a free agent from the Giants who can play tackle too? No, he's Feliciano he's an interior guy. He's going to play left guard, right guard, or center. And so that was the thing yesterday that kind of caught my attention was Lynch said that right guard is open to him. And so that's kind of another thing that piqued my ears perked up, because I'm like, wait, hold on a second. You got Spencer Burford, who started every game there last year, and he's coming back. I know he split time with Brunskill, but was that just about getting him used to the NFL because you're going to kick him out this year? So
that
we'll
was
see what
weird,
happens.
Jack. That was weird. You don't see a whole lot of platooning along the offensive line. Like, what? I want to ask you, what was the Niners' reasoning, in your opinion, for them kind of shuffling that right guard position?
I think when you look at it, it's really about. I thought that the reasoning originally for it was because Brunskill hadn't had much of a preseason because he got hurt early on in training camp, and so they were trying to work him back in. But then it seemed as though they were putting him in there because they weren't certain about the ability of Burford to play there full time. And when they had some needs, I think Brunskill moved around, or Brunskill was playing somewhere else for a little bit, and he didn't have that ability to rotate with him. You saw a little bit of a struggle out of Burford. I don't know. We'll see. I don't really know. I think they like him, but at the same time, they were trying to get the best play that they could out of him and kind of having him go in and out. I think in their minds, kind of platooning him the way they did might have been their way of letting him play, get him on the sidelines, talk through some things, then put him back out there, and then, that kind of thing.
Okay. I follow you.
Yeah. And then let's get to this one, because this is another good one. Lee Ving says, which safeties do you guys like and what round? And I'm going to hit this one really quick first, Lee, because, and Eric, because that's where I take my guy at 101. Jamie, what's his last name? The guy out of Johnny Robinson out of Florida State is somebody who I've been mocking to the 49ers all the way through. Yeah. But I'm not going to go in that direction. I'm going to go with Jair Brown out of Penn State. And I know this is a little bit of an overdraft. He's more of like probably going to go a little bit later, normally like in the 120s to 130 range. But because the 49ers don't have any picks there, they just go ahead and they take their guy right here at 101, Jair Brown out of Penn State. How about you?
Yeah, Well, I love it. I love it. And I got to shout out my boy, that Niner guy, aka Johnny, because he hit me up and said, you got to check out the Cal safety coming out of Berkeley, Daniel Scott. And I put on the tape, Jack. Daniel Scott is becoming a draft crush of mine, not only because he's a Bay Area kid, California kid, and he played out in Berkeley, which is very close to me. But he ran the 4.45. He's got this elite athleticism. Now, he is a redshirt senior, so he's an older guy, but I don't look at that as a negative, Jack, because that tells me he's experienced. Like we've already talked about, the Niners are in win now mode. This is a Super Bowl ready roster. You know, I know you brought back Tayshaun Gibson, but I want to add a younger safety who's also got some experience, and really Daniel Scott. This guy, he's almost like the free safety version of Talanoa Hufanga, Jack, is what, when I was watching some Cal games, it kept coming to mind. You see him timing up snaps, making tackles for losses in the backfield. He's a ball hawk, and he's way more athletic than Hufanga, but that's why I just see some similarities just in that, in the instinct, in the playmaking, and I have a feeling the Niners are going to like this Cal safety, Daniel Scott, 4.45. He's athletic. He can cover, more of a free safety, which I feel like would be the route the Niners would go. I don't think they would go for another box safety, because then you got two boxes. I mean, Hufanga can play in the deep center, but I like Hufanga more in the box, around the line of scrimmage, timing up snaps and getting into the back, knifing through the offense, getting into the backfield and making plays. But if they did, and Jamie Robinson, I'm glad you brought him up because he's on my radar too, kind of a do-it-all safety out of SFU. But Marte Mapu, I don't know how much you've seen of the kid from Sac State, but this guy, Jack, I watched one game of Mapu only because I can't find a lot of Sac State film, but I watched him against Incarnate Word, who was a college I didn't even know existed. But Incarnate Word's got this quarterback, Lindsey Scott, who threw like 60-something touchdowns last year. He's probably more of an XFL guy, Lindsey Scott. But when I was watching that game, Marte Mapu of Sac State, he's all over the field. Like this dude, he's 6'3", he's got this length, and just his movement and his fluid, he covers a lot of ground. So Mapu is a small school safety and he might be an outside linebacker. I think teams are going to have to make a decision, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? I think he's got fluid enough movement where he is a defensive back. I want to put him at safety, but I like Mapu. And then Brandon Joseph is another safety. He started at Northwestern, transferred to Notre Dame this past year. He's just a really good, smart football player who, I think he's going to be there, round 4, maybe round 5. So the three safeties or the 4 safeties I'm looking at, Daniel Scott, that's my crush. Jamie Robinson, who you like, I like as well. Marte Mapu's really intriguing out of Sac State. And then Brandon Joseph, Northwestern, Notre Dame safety, who he had 10 career picks in college. Like, he's a ball hawk. He's got some instincts. I like Brandon Joseph.
Yeah, I like that. And the Mapu one is a good one. He's the perfect fit for the 49ers at linebacker. I think he fits exactly what they're looking for. He fits right in with the Fred Willis mold. Fred Willis. Look at that. I just put together 2 49er greats into one player.
If you could make those 2 players into one, you got you're talking about 2 great linebackers. That would make the greatest linebacker of all time.
There you go. We're talking fusion here on the inside the 49er show tonight. We're fusing together Patrick Willis and Fred Warner to come up with Fred Willis. No, but Mapu, I think he kind of fits that Fred Warner mold, right? That guy that played, because that's kind of what Warner did at BYU. He was kind of a safety linebacker position, so it really
fits the slot. He lived in the slot at BYU, and that's why I think Fred Warner's got this extremely good. He's extremely good in zone coverage, where he just knows where everything. It dates back to his time at BYU. He spent so much time in the slot and in coverage that it's just second nature to him.
Yeah. So I took Brown at 101. How about you? Who did you take?
Well, as much as I love Daniel Scott, I don't think you need to take him here. So I'm I'm looking at pass rusher. I want to bolster the pass rush, Jack. So there's a couple guys I'm looking at. Andre Carter out of Army. I really like this kid, Jack. Now his body, he's gotta get yoked up. Okay, he's skinny, and I've read a lot of that can be contributed to just being at Army and what they're asked to do, not only on the football field but off. But I really like Andre Carter's pass rushing tools. He had 15 sacks in 2021. Like he was ultra productive, and that's with kind of this slender frame. So I think he's going to be able to put on some weight. When I was watching Andre Carter, we're talking about the Army pass rusher. Jack, I was getting, I love doing some comps. Like when a comp jumps out at me or comes to my mind, I can't help but share it. And when I'm doing comps, I like to aim high, right? Like who wants to be comped to some like you know, uh, mediocre player? No, I like to aim high. So when I'm talking Andre Carter out of Army, the guy who was kind of flashing at me with the height and 6'6" and slender, Jason Taylor, Hall of Famer, right? So Andre Carter, he was ultra productive, and some of these moves he was putting together against these offensive linemen were reminiscent of Jason Taylor, former Miami Dolphin great. So that would probably be my guy. But if it wasn't Carter, I got one more pass rusher I'm eyeing kind of at the back end of the third, and it's Zach Harrison out of Ohio State. Ohio State, man, they pump out these pass rushers, right? The Bosa brothers, Chase Young, like they coach the defensive end position well. Zach Harrison, I think this dude's really talented. He was another premier 5-star recruit who he's just got really good hands. He's got good hands. He's swatting away. He's a good pass rusher. He's got the length, because that's the thing. There's some pass rushers, because I really want to add a speed rusher, and I do like Nick Herbig out of Wisconsin, but he's not going to check the length box. I feel like there's some measurables the Niners covet so much, like length being one of them. So even though I like Nick Herbig and I think he would be really good opposite Bosa, I don't think the Niners are going to take him because he doesn't have the arm length. He doesn't have the height requisite that they're looking for. But Zach Harrison has all of that. So Zach Harrison, Andre Carter, those are the two pass rushers that I'm eyeing. I got them highlighted, and I'm hoping they make it to me at the end of the third.
Didn't the 49ers have an Andre Carter on their team back in the late 90s?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, he was a good player too.
That
was me. It was Andre Carter, Julian Peterson. Like that was when I was coming up. Those were my guys.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I don't think. Here's the thing for me. I just don't see them take. I think they are much higher on the kid out of USC than a lot of other folks are. I think Drake Jackson is the guy they're looking for. I know that he kind of fell off last year, but he was productive to an extent. 3 sacks. He had a big play against Vegas on the interception. I think that they really feel good about him moving forward. Give him a year in the weight room to really kind of rebuild his body and build himself up. I think that's the direction that they're going to go. So I don't see them taking a pass rusher at the top. I don't see the great need to go after a pass rusher at that point. I think it's going to come. That's going to come a little bit later, probably around 155. And I think the guy that I fell in love with early on in the process, and I haven't come off of it, is Viliama Fehoko out of San Jose State. That's the guy that I keep thinking. That's my local guy. I think that if there's going to be a local guy, he makes sense. He's got the bloodlines related to Vita Vea, the defensive tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is a guy who just was a mess when it came to, wrecking other teams' pass, with the pass rush and those types of things. Really strong against the run. So I like him, and I put him down at 155.
I really like Fehoko. I do. I mean, my notes say this he's high effort. He dominates. He's got an advanced array of pass rushing moves at his size. Like you see him doing spin moves. Like you see him flashing these pass rushing tools that you really just don't see out of players at his size. So I'm with you there. I like Fehoko. Let me give you my late round defensive end that I'm crushing on. Unless you want me to hold off. Are we going pick by?
No, go ahead, since we're talking about defensive ends, and I already skipped forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want my late round defensive end. I really look, and again, I'm kind of looking for more of a pass rusher, Jack, because I feel like okay, they added Farrell, like they have some options as far as like big ends, but Thomas Incoom, I really like this kid Incoom out of Central Michigan. He's got tremendous get off, right, and it's not inconsistent. It's like every snap, Thomas Incoom is flying off the ball. He's the first player on the D line just getting off at the snap. So he's got this great acceleration at the snap. He's got the hands I like. I like the hand usage, the coordination it takes to swat an offensive lineman's hands away right when they're trying to punch you. That's my late round guy. He's just got tremendous get off. I think he's got the tools to be a good situational pass rusher that you can get in round 5 or round 6.
Yeah, and I like that. That's a good spot. I think that's kind of the spot that we're going to see. And hey, I'm gonna defer to you because you're the guy who a couple of years ago said that Arden Key was going to have a big season back in 2021. I scoffed at you when you first said it, and then it all paid out. And I had to, give you the props again. We're speaking with Eric Kuiper Jr. here on the Inside the Fire show, talking about the 49ers draft. He knows everything about defensive ends, knows a bit about everything. I want to ask you now, 102, you told me, you gave me 199, 101. Now, what do you think they're going to do at 102 at the end of round 3, their last pick there?
What do I think they're going to do? Well, there's a couple tight ends who I love, and unfortunately, I don't think they're going to make it there. But if Sam Laporta somehow makes it to the back end of the 3rd, which I don't think he will, I love Sam Laporta. Jack, we're talking about the Iowa tight end. When I was watching Sam Laporta, I was having flashbacks of another Iowa tight end, and not George Kittle, but Dallas Clark. Sam Laporta and Dallas Clark, they might be the same guy. I love Sam Laporta, just his movement, his acceleration. He's going to be a good pass catcher in the NFL. And then Darnell Washington, I don't think he's going to be there, but he's that dominating blocker. He's a freak of nature. I love Darnell Washington. I mean, do you think there's a chance, Jack, that Sam Laporta or Darnell Washington could make it there to the end of the 3rd?
I don't know if they're going to make it all the way down to 102. Laporta definitely has been dropping in the mock drafts that I've been looking at on the site that I go on, and the one that I look at did a pretty good job last year, especially in round 1. Actually, throughout the draft, as far as getting guys close to where they were going to go. They didn't nail them, but they were in that
secret, Jack, or are you going to put me on?
No, it's pretty straightforward. It's PFF.com, the PFF mock draft. Their mock draft simulator last year I found to be fairly accurate with where they had guys going. Now, you look at as many mock drafts as I do, trying to come up with mine for the site for Inside the 49ers, the blog. I'm looking at them a lot, so I start to see where these guys are falling, right? And it seems like they're pretty much always falling in that same range. And when you start to look at it last year during the draft, it sure seemed like a lot of times they were within 4 or 5 picks on a lot of these guys. So looking at it, I think they're going to be gone a little bit sooner than 102. I think if their 49ers are going to get one of those guys, that's where they would have to trade up. So that's why when I did my mock draft with the trade last week, having a Trey Lance trade in there, I had gone with Laporta because they were trading up to get him in the early part of the second, like midway through second round.
That makes sense. Yeah. So anyway, those are my long shots. I didn't think they were going to be there, but I will tell you about my other tight end crush, who I think will be here, and he blew it up at the combine. That might have boosted him a little bit. But I'm talking about Zach Kuntz at an Old Dominion. The thing is, he's a crush of mine, Jack. I'm not sure the Niners are going to love him because he's not this dominating blocker. I have to admit it. When you're talking about Zach Kuntz, he's a tantalizing pass catcher. He's 6'7", ran a 4.55. Like, his movement at this size is absolutely insane, and that's why I'm so intrigued by him. There wasn't a ton of Old Dominion tape either, but from what I watched him against Virginia, and he's plucking balls away from his frame. Just what he does at his size and his movement skills. You want to talk about a big slot. I would love to have Zach Kuntz in the slot. The only thing, and He did have an extremely productive season, not this past year, but I want to say 2021. He caught 70-something balls, was ultra productive. Did have a knee injury this past year, limited him to 5 games. And, the end of the third, it might be a little rich, but, some might say the Danny Gray pick was a little rich because, they wanted to go after some speed and try to stretch the field. So if they did grab a tight end and they drafted Zach Kuntz, I think he's a legitimate weapon at the next level, and I'd like it.
Yeah, and KW 2421, I just highlighted his comment there a second ago. Said that you got to build a run block in the Friars offense, especially at tight end. So that's the only thing there. We'll see. But that's a name that I've been seeing get a lot of run. You look at my picks, and you just kind of mentioned it. Having to kind of overdraft some of these guys to get the guys you want, and that's what I did at 102. When I got to 102, I have the 49ers going after running back Israel Abanikanda out of Pitt. This is another one of those guys that's like in that 130 range, right? So both Brown and Abanikanda are guys who probably could go more towards the 4th round, but because of where the 49ers are sitting, they might be able to trade back a little bit I'm not doing trades here. So in order to get him, I say they take him at 102 just because he's falling and they like him. It's very similar to the pick last year of Ty Davis Price, a little bit of an overdraft, I think, for Davis Price, but with where they were sitting, they had to take him at that point. I think it's the same thing here. And about this guy, Abanikanda is a big back, physical, has breakaway speed. With the injuries and everything they're dealing with Elijah Mitchell, I think that's the reason why they go out and get this guy.
Hey, I like him. That's an intriguing running back. And if they do draft a running back, I'm looking for someone to give them kind of that speed element. And Israel absolutely brings that to the table. Someone who can threaten the outside zone. Because it felt like the Niners kind of got away from the outside zone last year. Is it because, McCaffrey can do it, but I wouldn't necessarily say that was his strength. Like when you talk Raheem Mostert, that was his strength. Hey, toss it out to Raheem, let him get to the edge, or stretch it out with the wide zone and let him one cut. And so they would be getting back to that philosophy if they did take Israel Abanikanda.
It's a tough one for the 49ers because I think you're right. I think they did struggle a little bit with their zone scheme. And I think part of it's because teams know that's what they want to run. So they're overplaying it. And so they were having to run a bunch of cutback stuff. Plus they weren't really
five-man fronts. Those 5-man fronts, Jack.
Yeah. So they were you saw them doing a lot more cutback and that kind of stuff. Plus with Garoppolo in there, you don't really get much in the boot game. And teams were really attacking the boot. Whether it's the 49ers or all these Shanahan type of offenses. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. So I got Abanikanda at 102. Do you have the 49ers taking a running back at any point?
I don't. I do not, although I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked if they did, and Keaton Mitchell is another speedster who I do like. So while I don't think they will, because I think they got a plethora of horses in their backfield. When you're talking McCaffrey, Jordan Mason was really good in his small sample size. Eli Mitchell's going to be back, like, TDP. They got bodies in that running back room where, if you draft a guy, especially early in the 3rd round, like you're going to end up cutting a guy because the Niners are not bringing they usually bring 3 running backs, not including Juszczyk. Feel like they usually roster on the 53 3 running backs, 4 maybe, but right now they got 4. So now you draft a guy that's going to be your 5th. So then what are you cutting TDP? You're doing the Trey Sermon thing all over again. So it's possible. I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think they're going to take a running back.
Yeah, I know they kept 4 last year, and then there was one that was always inactive on game day. So we'll see. I just think maybe they trade Mitchell. Maybe there's a trade there. Getting down to it, we're getting up against it on time, but I wanted to ask you, I wanted to throw this one name out there because this is one name that I like is Jonah. My gosh, this is one of those.
Tavai.
Jonah Tavai, the defensive lineman out of San Diego State. A guy that you look at what he did in there. It's interesting too because he played there in that like 3-3-5, so he's really got a 2 gap, and he's still making big plays. And I think in the 49ers scheme where he can be more of an attacking player where he doesn't even have the two gap. I know he's a little bit on the small side, but his explosiveness would be a really good addition for the 49ers, especially in the back end of that rotation for year one. And then he could be the guy that maybe takes over for a guy like Kevin Givens in 2024.
Jack, I don't know if you're looking at my draft sheet I got here or what, but I really like Jonah Tavai too. If you want to look at, PFF grades, I mean, PFF graded Jonah Tavai off the charts. And then when you watch the film, I hate to bring up Solomon Thomas, but he's actually I was seeing some flashes of Solomon Thomas, but that's why you're seeing him go later in the draft. He's expected to be what, maybe 4th, 5th round. So Jonah Tavai, he was ultra productive. So many tackles for loss, Jack.
Yeah.
Jonah Tavai just gets into the backfield. The guy just makes plays. He could be on my team any day of the week. And he's got that built-in leverage, right? He's like 6 foot, 300 pounds. Like, you want to talk about a guy who's naturally able to get underneath these offensive linemen and kind of move them around. Jonah Tavai has got built-in leverage, being 6 foot and 300 pounds. He was ultra productive. I would love to add him to the defensive tackle rotation.
Let me ask you this. Let's hit one more spot. What is one other position that we haven't touched on right now that you feel strongly the 49ers are going to go after? So we haven't talked wide receiver yet.
No.
DB, we talked about the safety spot, but not cornerback. Kicker, I think they're going to take a kicker. They might even take a quarterback at the end. So what's one spot that we haven't discussed yet that you think the 49ers are going to pick somebody? Let me know who that would be.
I'm always looking to add to the cornerback room. You can't have enough corners. And unfortunately, I've always been kind of low on Ambry Thomas. Like, I was one of the few last offseason, Jack, I was preaching Demo is better than Ambry Thomas. And it was hard to get people on board with that. But now I think everybody knows it. Diamador Lenore, he's a good player. There's so many times Demo, like the AJ Green ball downfield, like he's getting hands on balls that, Devontae Adams caught a ball on him that where Demo was right there. And I hear some people say, oh, he's close, but he's not making the play. Close only is good for horseshoes and hand grenades. Like, to me, it's BS because I put some credence. If you're right there getting hands on balls, but yeah, the receiver's making the spectacular play, then you got to give him credit. But Diamador Lenore, I like Demo. But Ambry Thomas, I'm kind of out on him. Maybe that's a guy who you might be able to trade, maybe a team look back and say, hey, we liked Ambry a couple years ago coming out, so we'll give you a 5 or we'll give you a 6. But I'm always looking to add to the cornerback room. And I got a couple names for you. Corey Trice out of Purdue.
Yeah.
I think he's a good football player. I think he's a good football player. I want to pull him up here to give him his due justice. Statistically,
yeah, he's a big guy. Kind of looks like a linebacker, they say.
Yeah, 6'3". You're right. The dude's freaking huge. Interceptions, dropped a couple, but he was a guy. PFF liked his grade, and when I watched the Purdue tape, I liked how he looked. He step for step with wide receivers, Corey Trice, and then the other guy. You want to talk about? We go from one big cornerback in Trice to a smaller guy. Travius Hodges Tomlinson. He was the Jim Thorpe winner, which is given out to the best DB in the country. Jack's lighting up over here. Jack's giving me some kind of hand motions here. Jack, what do you got to say?
You went from the biggest guy to the littlest guy. You went from the guy that's like 6'3", the monster, to like the guy that's I'm taller than. So, but he's a baller.
A damn good football player.
He is.
He's just a freaking football player. He's LaDainian Tomlinson is his uncle. He's brought up in a football family. Jim Thorpe winner. He's just a darn good football player, which, yeah, he's small. But sometimes, Jack, I think we put too much into some of these measurables where it's like, you know what? Just watch the tape and watch the guy cover, and he's in the wide receiver's hip pocket.
Yeah, that's the thing with him. He's on the smaller side, but he's all over everybody. That's the thing. He's right there. He has good ball skills. I really like that one. I actually mocked him to the 49ers in my first mock draft. I don't have him in my last one, but I really like his abilities. I just don't see them making that move for a guy that's 5'8". Although he's a very good player, that just doesn't seem to fit their mold of what they would do there. So we'll see. Mekhi Blackman is the cornerback that I'd bring up, the guy from USC. They had him at the local pro day in Santa Clara. Blackman, when you look at the PFF score for last year, he was actually rated as the number 2 cornerback in the nation. So we'll see the direction that they go there. But Blackman is a guy who has the size and a lot of the traits that they look for in a corner. So that's the guy I actually have them going there at 173.
Love it, Jack. Love it, Jack. And before, I know we're probably going to wrap it up here, I'm going to give you some last thoughts on my late round guys. Well, defensive tackle Devontae Maxwell out of Chattanooga. You got to check him out, Jack. If you're looking for like a late round pass rushing defensive tackle, Devontae Maxwell, I'm really high on. And then if they didn't get one of these really good tight ends, because I think it's a really good tight end class this year, Josh Wiley, I absolutely love out of Cincinnati. Will Mallory's a really intriguing pass catcher. Needs to work on his blocking, but I like Will Mallory. Daniel Barker out of Michigan State. Like this dude, the tape, I was pleasantly surprised with Daniel Barker out of Michigan State as a pass catcher. And then the last tight end, because the Niners are going to draft a tight end. They might draft 2 tight ends, Jack, because I want to add to this room. You got George Kittle, but, Tyler Kroft, he's going to be gone. Ross Dwelly, he didn't do nothing last year. Charlie Warner can't get on the field. I want to bolster this tight end room. They might not only take 1 tight end, Jack. They might draft 2. And one guy, Kyle Patterson, out of the Air Force. First I had us drafting an Army guy earlier. Now Kyle Patterson, if you want to look at a player who can move people in the run game. Now the competition level wasn't the strong. Hey, I'm going to the.
You're with the armed forces, that's for sure.
The armed forces. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. I want the armed forces guys. Like those guys. Kyle Patterson out of Air Force. He's a really good blocker. They didn't throw it a ton, so the pass catching numbers aren't there. But what I saw from Kyle Patterson, I kind of liked. And as a late round guy who's a really good blocking tight end, I could see him being a Niner.
Yeah, you're going for those disciplined guys. That's what you're doing. You're looking for some discipline. Real quick, I did have a super chat that came up earlier. This was back with our topic on Trey Lance, and it was from 2.0. Thank you very much for the super chat. Apologize it took us for so long, but we'd already gotten into the draft stuff by the time it popped up. But he says, even if the Niners can't get an early second for Trey Lance, it feels easy enough to package a 5th or a 3rd with Lance to get it done. There's a lot of ways to get it done. If anyone actually wants them, I think that's the real issue. So really what he's saying here is it feels like they can get up there, but there's nobody that really wants Trey Lance. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for whether other teams want him or not. I'm going to go with that they're not calling because the 49ers what they're asking for. I think that's really what the holdup is. The 49ers want something up a little bit higher. I think that's the decision. I don't think the 49ers want to give up picks with Lance to get something back. I just don't see that to be the way they're going to do it. But I appreciate the super chat 2.0. That's an interesting one. I think it's something that you're not the only person that has mentioned that to me, whether it's here or on the old Twitter machine. So, Baller, you got anything coming up on your channel?
Hey, as soon as the Niners make these picks, you're going to get Baller's recap. So check me out. My YouTube channel is right here up on the screen. BayAreaBaller 18. Been talking a lot of Niners, mixing in some Warriors, San Francisco Giants. Apparently people want me to talk some Giants, so I might be mixing that in. But predominantly, we're talking Niners, and I can't wait to see who the Niners are going to pick. Who are they going to add to our squad?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. The draft is always a lot of fun. It's like, this is the time where hope springs eternal for everybody. Every player that they pick is going to be a stud. It's always a lot of fun to look at and see where they go and those types of things. So I'm excited for the draft. Really quick, before I got another one, it's another super chat that's from Girls Dig Football 2. No comment, just the super chat. So I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. Thank you so much. I got to ask you this question though before I do let you go, because I'm into basketball too. I don't, I at one point in time I was involved with it a little bit, but I will say this: You think the Golden State Warriors are going to win tomorrow night in SAC? They go up 3-2.
I do. And I have to be honest. De'Aaron Fox having this finger injury really makes me think that where I got to be honest. I was a little concerned. Hey, Warriors, they haven't been on the road. They haven't been good on the road. They're going to have to win one in Sacramento. But anytime you got to put some wrap on your finger and it's your shooting hand, and De'Aaron Fox, like, I knew he was a good player, but he's really opened my eyes. Like, De'Aaron Fox is absolutely sensational, and his floater game is just off the charts. I'm thinking with that finger wrap, maybe the 3-point shot won't be as consistent, and you can kind of sag off him a little bit. We'll see. Maybe he doesn't play with some kind of wrap. I had read that if he does play, he's going to have some kind of tape or something. And anytime you're wrapping something on your shooting hand and your shooting fingers, it's going to affect the jumper. A la John Morant couldn't shoot it last night from what I was watching. So I think the Warriors are going to wrap this thing up. Injuries happen. It's just a part of the game, and the Warriors are going to handle business.
Yeah, I feel good about their chances if they do this. Take the ball to the basket. Take the ball to the basket. Don't take the 3-point shot. Take the ball. Attack the basket. Because every time that they've gone in, they've started to attack the rim. They have found success. And then that's one of the things I really liked about Game 4 for the Warriors. They started that game off attacking the rim, and then they started kicking it out. They were hitting their 3-point shot. The difference was that SAC hadn't played very well in the first half or the first quarter of the last couple of games up leading in Game 2 or Game 3. In Game 4, they were able to keep up with the Warriors. But just take the ball to the basket. The Kings don't have a guy that can really guard down there. So that's number one. Take the ball to the hoop. And number two, get Draymond Green on whoever the big guy is for the Kings, because that's the problem they dealt with a little bit in the last game. You saw Kevon Looney, love the guy, great rebounder, but he's not really tough under the basket. That's a bad way to put it, but he gets pushed around a little bit. You see, part of it's because he's taller than Draymond, right? So Draymond just has a little bit more of he's a little bit harder to push. He's a little bit more of a
center
wall.
of gravity.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm talking about. You see in that last game, they just kept driving Looney back under the basket and shooting over the top of him. When there was at one point, I think it was in the first half, where they had put Green in the game. I think it was when he first stepped in, and you could really see his defensive presence on the court. I know he made the big three, and the offense kind of got going, but you could see his defensive presence on the court. So Green coming back, take the ball to the hoop, and I just think, hey, it's going to be all about Warriors game 5, and then bring it back to San Francisco for Game 6 and take it.
Love it. Let's wrap it up. Bring on the Lakers, man. I want to see bring them on. Let's go, Bron.
There you go. Absolutely. Real quick, want to shout out CG Ruthless. Hey, yo, CG, good to have you up checking it out. And then Girls Dig Football 2 gave us a super chat a minute ago and then hit us back, said, sorry, trying to cook dinner and listen to you guys and watch the basketball game at the same time. Just wanted to say thanks for giving us insight for the draft. Looking forward to it this year. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You multitask right there.
That is multitasking. That's why I'm out.
Basketball. You got the Jack Hammer pod going on. Like, hey, that's a hell of a Tuesday.
Hey, that's why I'm outside, because it's almost dinner time and I can't be at my normal spot because the kitchen's right there. And my girlfriend tonight for dinner, she's barbecuing chicken. And so she's going to have to keep walking back and forth. So I'm in the patio. I keep seeing her walk back and forth, bringing the chicken on off. So I'm getting hungry. It looks really good. She's a damn good cook. Always, doesn't matter what she makes. I don't even ask her what she's cooking because I know it's going to be good. Anyway.
Hey, Jack, love it. Thanks for bringing me on and talking Niners and talking draft. I had a blast. And you best believe after these picks roll in, I'm going to reach out to you and see how you're feeling about it.
Absolutely. So make sure everybody check out BayAreaBaller for his draft takes as well. And I want to say thanks for tuning in. If you guys could also do me a favor, hit the like button before you leave. And then if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so you don't miss anything when we go live. So Baller, thanks for joining. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in as well. Keep it locked into the channel for all your breaking news and updates as it happens. Draft's coming up and you'll be getting them all there too. So take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.